Unfortunately, in the manual, the diagram for the links aren't to scale, so you won't be able to use the manual to Hey guys, welcome back to Revolution XRC and welcome to the next part of my Element Enduro Builder's Kit build series. In this part of the build, we are going to be taking care of the links as well as the drive shafts. And for that, you'll need bags 7 and 8, as well as these pivot balls. And for these steps, if you do not have a set of side cutters handy, I highly recommend these. These are Tamiya side cutters. I'll put a link to these in the description below, and these are great for cutting pieces off of sprues. For gate 1 of the links, you'll need these following parts. Now this particular link should be 83 millimeters long, and when put together with the rod ends, it should be 112.5 millimeters long. Unfortunately, in the manual, the diagram for the links aren't to scale, so you won't be able to use the manual to compare the actual lengths of the links. So bring out the manual for you to see. So you can see this is an 83 millimeter link, and it does not match up with the diagram at all, which I think is an oversight on this manual. But due to that fact, you will need to use something to actually measure the links. So let's make sure this is the 83 millimeter link. And unfortunately I'm out of battery, so you won't see the digital display, but from here I can see that it is indeed the 83 millimeter link. Now, a helpful tool for putting links together are these ProTech RC shock pliers. They're great for gripping links and shock shafts without scratching them up, like so. And we can go ahead and start threading the links. I also use this handy 3D printed tool to help me put the rod ends on. I'll put a link to this in the description below, as well as these shock pliers. Now this link in gate 1 will be for the panhard. So what you'll want one bent rod end facing that way and this other bent rod end facing down. Let's go ahead and measure this. Once again, this should be about 112.5 millimeters. And that is just about there. Another thing that comes in handy, or another reason that these shock pliers come in handy, is they're great for mounting pivot balls. So you place the pivot ball right there, and you just do this. Done. Alright, so on the chassis side, we'll want this one facing that way. And you'll want to use the longer screw, which is 3x16 M3. This is 3x14. So the 3x16 will be used for the top part of the panhard rod. Oops, wrong way. Put them in here. On the other side should go to the front axle. There is a mount for the panhard rod. Right there. You want to mount it to this one. There you go. You can see that the panhard rod is now mounted up. Here you can see the complete gate 1. Now for gate 2 of the link section, you'll need this 73mm link, 2 bent rod ends, pivot balls, a 3x18 and a 3x14, and also an M3 nut. And the total length of this link should be 102.2 millimeters. So let's just make sure it's roughly around that area. And yes, it is. And for this one, since this is the steering link, you'll want the pivot balls facing the same direction. So I've temporarily put this servo back in just so I can hook up the steering link. So the longer screw, the 3x18, will go through here to the top through the servo horn. I think my nut driver will fit, so I'm going to have to hold it in place while I screw this in. Alright. Now we're going to need another M3 nut, and we're going to attach the 3x14 to this part. Now the manual actually has the link going underneath. Having just a little bit of trouble here with the camera in the way, but otherwise this is a fairly simple, easy step. There we go. Here you can see they're at the same angle, which should prevent bump steer when it's fully put together. So the steering link and the panhard rod should always be parallel. So here's this side. That's how you mount that side. And that's how you mount the servo side. Now, these directions were made with this stock servo horn in mind. Not all servo horns are this thick. You might have a low profile one that is a little bit thinner. So you'll have to adjust accordingly to make sure that this panhard rod and the steering link are parallel to each other when you cycle the suspension. For gate 3, you'll need the following. You'll need the 93mm link, 2 pivot balls, 2 bent rod ends, 2 M3 nuts, 1 28mm screw, and 1 20mm screw. When you finish putting the rod ends on this link, the total length should be 122mm and each bent rod end should be in the opposite direction. For this particular link, make sure the pivot balls are both facing the same direction. This particular link will become the front upper link. Take the M3x20 screw and you put it right here. Now I forgot to add that you'll need an extra pivot ball to go opposite the link on the axle. Take the M3x28. This will go on this side of the axle into the pivot ball. Give you a closer look at what I'm doing here. So you can see the screw going to the axle with this pivot ball and into this link right here. Give you a better look at that first. And it completes gate 3, the front upper link. For gate 4, you'll need the following. You'll need the bent link here, 2 straight rod ends, 2 pivot balls, 2 M3 nuts, and 2 M3x14 screws. Now the total length of this link should be 154.5 millimeters. I don't think my thing is long enough, just about. So my tool doesn't go that far, but it's just about right. Also make sure the pivot balls are facing the same direction for this link as well. And it completes gate 4, the behind the axle steering link. For gate 5, you'll need the following pieces. Now the Element Enduro Builders Kit comes with the option for 3 different wheelbases. The shortest wheelbase is the 11.8 inch wheelbase, and with that wheelbase it uses a length of 96 millimeters for the upper rear link and a length of 100 millimeters for the lower rear link. For the 12-inch wheelbase, it uses a 100 millimeter upper rear link and a 103 millimeter lower link. I did not see the 103 millimeter link, so I'm guessing that they're just using another 100 millimeter link, because I have 400 millimeter links in here. So that would be for the 12-inch wheelbase, and for the 12.3 inch wheelbase, which is what I'm using, we'll be using the 108 millimeter rear upper links and the 114 millimeter rear lower links. So for gate 5, which is the rear upper links, you'll want the 108 millimeter links, 4 bent rod ends, 4 pivot balls, 1 M3 by 28 millimeter screw, 2 M3 by 20 millimeter screws, and a M3 nut. Once again, with this link, you'll want the rod ends facing in opposite directions as far as the bend goes, and the completed length of this link should be 137 millimeters. So let's go ahead and measure that. And it looks like I'm a little bit long, so I'll go ahead and adjust that. There we go, we're at 137. Once again, with these links, you want to make sure the pivot balls on each link are facing the same direction. Go ahead and take the M3 by 28 and you're going to thread it through the mount. I was short 2 M3 nuts, so you'll need 2 more. These are the M3 by 20 screws right here. And that completes gate 5. For gate 6, which are the lower front links, you'll need 2 100mm links, 4 pivot balls, 4 bent rod ends, 2 M3 by 14 screws, and 2 M3 by 16 grub screws. The completed length of this rear lower link should be 129.5 millimeters. So I'm a little short here. I'll have to adjust the links a little bit. Once again, make sure the pivot balls are facing the same direction. Now take the M3 by 14 screw and screw in your link to the axle. Now for the grub screws. And the grub screws go right here. And that completes gate 6. For gate 7, the lower rear links will need the two 114 millimeter links. For the 313 millimeter wheelbase, we'll need 4 bent rod ends, 4 pivot balls, 2 M3x14 screws, and 2 M3x16 grub screws. When you complete these rear lower links, they should be 143 millimeters long. Once again, when you put the pivot balls in, make sure that they're facing the same direction. Take the M3x14 screw, and on this side, you'll use the M3x16 grub screw. And that completes gate 7. That also completes the link portion of this build. And we'll go ahead and move on to the drive shafts. Moving on to the drive shafts, we'll need bag 8. For gate 1 of the drive shaft section, you'll need basically all the parts in bag 8. We'll start with the rear drive shaft first. I'm using Bob Smith Industries blue thread lock. I'll put a link to this in the description below, but I mean any thread lock you have is fine. And here I'll be using Permatex anti-seize. Gets quite messy, so just use very little. Spread it around a little. Now on the front, the axle side, you'll want to use this. For the axle side, you'll want to use this end right here. For the transmission side, you'll want to use this end right here. So on the rear axle, the short side should use the transmission end, and so that'll be this one. Just like that. Now we have the components for the front and the rear drive shafts. Now when you put these drive shafts together, you want to make sure that the drive shafts are in phase. So what you look for when you put these drive shafts together, or at least both ends together, make sure that the joints are lined up at the same angle. So in this case, both of these joints are lined up the same way right there. And that's how they're kept in phase. And you can just check that to see if the holes lined up as well. Usually when the holes line up right there and there, when those two holes line up, they're in phase, because usually the joints are the same as well. For gate 2 of this section, we're just going to be slipping the drive shaft onto the chassis. So you'll want to flip your chassis upside down for easy access. Let's take care of the front drive shaft. Once again, the side with this type of sleeve goes towards the transmission, and the side with this type of sleeve goes towards the axle. So we'll go ahead and slip this part on. Oops. Just doesn't want to stay on. Alright, let's give that a shot. take care of the axle side first, and you're going to want to thread lock the drive shaft pin. The easy way is just to turn it back right side up to get this side of the drive shaft lined up with the transmission. Let's right up there. Now we'll move to the rear drive shaft. Once again, the one with this type of sleeve goes towards the transmission. Flip it over again and take care of the axle side. And if you need to, you just turn the axle until it's the holes where the pin line up. And that completes step gate 2. We've mounted both the front and rear drive shafts onto the chassis. For gate 3, all we're doing is making sure that the drive shafts are in phase, and I've actually already taken care of that. Make sure that the pins, screw pins, are the same on both ends on the same plane. So you can see here the screw pin is there and it's on the same plane right there. So that's just making sure that the drive shafts are in phase. And that pretty much completes the drive shaft step of the build. And that also completes this part of the build series. So thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell for the next part of my Element Enduro kit build series. Thanks for watching.